since the birth of television and radio, there have been quiz challenges to try to win money.
It's like a combination of gambling and jealousy and just like the relatableness of watching someone who is like you, that your luck can turn on an instant or on a game show.
What's amazing is like it's a weird time to live right now. There's not much that unites us anymore. Man, game shows still do it.
It's another one. See, I every time we do these, it's like what game show song could we have remade in
Ooh,
the feel, the vibe of that that intro.
yes. Oh my gosh, I've been thinking about that as well. Something, you
What
got
could
to
we have
have some
done?
sort of 70s synthesizer.
Oh, that's
You know? Yeah,
oh, incredible. Well, we are
yes.
back for another episode of the Twisted Eras podcast here, season 4, diving into game shows. Your hosts, Rob Stott and Doug Marsh. Excited to be back at it with you. Um,
AKA Wink Martindale and Bob Barker.
who's who?
I mean,
Incredible, man.
if your name is Wink Martindale, that you have to
You're made it.
sell.
You
You
have
have to
one
do game
job.
shows, right?
You're right.
Yeah,
Game show or used car salesman. I don't know.
exactly. One
Like,
or
one
the other. Because let's be honest, they're pretty similar, right?
Oh my God. What an incredible topic because
Yeah.
we find some good ones, don't get me wrong. I think there's lots of topics that, we could dive into and give this Twisted Era spin, but this one is just there's so many ways to go with it, and game shows have been forever. It
Yeah.
feels like forever.
Essentially,
Um,
since the birth of television
yep.
and radio, there have been quiz challenges to try to win money that from sponsors.
Yep.
Essentially, a sponsor can throw this much money on this section, and voila, you have game shows.
Yep.
And today,
So that a very interesting topic that we'll have many different takes on. Some that
yeah.
you may not even know that I'm gonna take us down a certain
Oh,
path.
okay.
But I the first game show. Do you know what the first televised game show was? And it may have had money attached to it. I didn't read the whole history on it, but
Sure.
it was one of those simple little quick Google searches for what the first game show was.
Well,
First televised game show.
I'll let you have this one. If
Hmm.
you know, I went a different path. I looked and see how many have been made
Oh, that's a good one
since
too.
the start. So I'm gonna say
That's an interesting number.
I do not know what yours is going to
Oh,
be.
well,
So
calling it a game show may be a little bit misleading, although
yeah,
it could be in theory. They first appear, according to this search,
uh-huh,
on TV in the 30s, late 30s,
yep,
and they're counting the Spelling Bee as the first televised
nice.
game show. So I get it. You got scripts
There,
nowadays, right?
there is competition.
Yeah.
You are competing, and it is quiz style. You have to be able to
So
spell.
that's a great segue because when I think about your number and what you're going to ask, it's
Mhm.
to me it's like, well, what constitutes a game show,
It's a
right?
fair question.
So when I think of it, I mean, there's so many, right? I
Hmm.
mean, there's the iconic ones, and I don't want to spoil it
Sure.
too soon, but like
Yeah,
you've
but
got the Wheel of Fortunes and Jeopardy's and Price's Rights and the
the
$64,000 pyramid
the Mount
episode,
Rushmore,
right?
of game
I
shows.
think we just
Yes,
named it. So that
yes,
was it. But then, like
yeah.
in my head, and
Hmm.
the things I think of, there are prizes involved, but there's like the whole slew of them that I grew up with on Nickelodeon. And I'll just
Sure.
leave it at that without diving
Yeah.
into specific ones. But it's like the kids that team up and go do a challenge and this and
Sure.
that. And there were so many great iconic Nickelodeon game shows that
Oh yeah.
if
Even
are
before you.
right, if they were rolled into that number, are they rolled
Mhm.
into that number? You
So
know?
here's the deal: is like they didn't tell me exactly. I just pulled them into Excel and counted.
There you
And
go.
so
That works.
Wikipedia lists nearly 800
Wow.
general game or quiz show style of game shows.
Wow.
Now, I will be fair, they counted each one, so like there are multiple editions of The Price is
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
They
Well,
count them as
Jeopardy. You
two.
got
They're
Celebrity
multiple
Jeopardy, Jeopardy After
Jeopardies.
Dark.
Those are all counted
Yep.
separately. But of that, roughly 750 that have been around since the 30s, that did not include panel shows,
Okay.
which are like, to tell the truth and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Double Dare. That was kind of a
Double
panel
Dare's a
show,
game
right?
show. That's a
Game
game
show. Yeah,
show
okay.
because it is questions, but it
Yeah.
did not include dating shows,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
you know, and it did not include reality competitions,
Yeah, that's
which
another one
are
too. Survivor,
all, yes,
right?
those are all really and truly game shows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have their
And
own
so
category,
they
reality
they
game shows.
they have exactly real and technically there's a competition involved there as
Yeah,
well. I mean,
yeah. I
Amazing
mean,
Race is a game show. I'm sorry.
Bachelor. Like you
Yeah.
said, dating. Like, is that a
That's a
game
dating
show?
sh-
In theory,
that's a
it's like it's a
that's
dating game show.
it's kind of like the dating game from the 70s,
Yeah,
it's just a modern version, but it's and
eight hundred.
it's got to be that they're cheap,
Yeah.
you
Oh, the formula works. The
yeah,
formula
sponsors
works.
sponsors love it because their product is there ain't no fast forward and through the Price is Right, and every game is going to have some sort of
Oh,
product placement. It's the
hmm.
ultimate in product placement, And hey, we're going to throw a car out there. We hope it doesn't. We hope we don't have to give it to you, but we're going to throw
Right.
it out there because for the 5 minutes of this
Mhm.
game, all of our products are out there, and so companies love it, and you don't have to pay anybody to be on it unless they win. you
Yep.
know, now the hosts are doing very well, but
Yeah,
that's really the only
absolutely.
person you have to pay for. It's wild. It is the perfect TV formula, and
It's like
it
I
still
mean,
works today.
you could call it it's gambling in theory if you think
It's
about
some
it,
game.
right? Like it's the ultimate on-screen gamble that I think that's what it like appeals to those gambling senses within you, right? Of like wanting
Absolutely.
the idea of chance and like it's a normal person. It's also like that dangling carrot of like this normal person that's gonna win this big thing and like I wish that was me. It's like a combination of gambling and jealousy and just like the relatableness of watching someone who is like you that can go and win something and like your luck can turn on an instant or on a game
And
show.
that's an interesting one as well because when you watch the NFL, you're not Jalen Hurts. You're not
No,
going to go out there and do this. You're not going to. But when you watch Wheel of Fortune, you're like, oh my gosh, they're
that could have
playing
been me.
crossword
How
puzzles.
many
I
times?
could have done that.
How many times have you been sitting there and like they're struggling
Oh,
on Wheel of Fortune and you're like, it's
yes,
so easy. I could do
it's
this if I was
this.
there.
It's this. And I love the fact is and Jeopardy is my go-to. Love to
Mm,
death. I actually have an app that you can kind of play along with it. So if
yeah,
you get it right, you can push that you got that, and so you can keep your
that's
total.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah, that one was pretty neat. But you'll sit there and be like, "Oh yeah, I could totally dominate this," and then you get there, and your categories are, you know,
The things.
16th century Europe, opera, all these things. You're like, yeah, I would be negative.
Right.
There's some luck involved.
Until was it Dan Patrick did that Sports Jeopardy for a while, and that was
Yes,
the just incredible. I felt like I was running through that. I could have gone and tested to be on that while they were still doing it,
yes.
but
I will. I did love the fact that they didn't make it easy either. It wasn't like
no,
super easy.
no.
And we can get into that as well. There have been all sorts of category game shows throughout the years, and you'll watch it and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is the easiest thing I've ever seen." But that's I before we get going, we
Yeah.
like to open up with, "Hey, what you're first and all this
Oh,
sort of stuff." I was sitting here, I was like, before we get going, we talk. We do a lot of pop culture
mhm.
stuff, and I found, I'm pretty sure. Let's see, I think it was 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 sayings that we utilize in our everyday life that come, in a sense, from game shows. When you hear someone say this, you know what it means, right?
Yeah.
So if I say, "Come on down,"
Yeah, that's the first one that came to mind. That's the. I'll be honest. That's the. Sitting here off the cuff. That's the only one that came to mind that I could think of really quickly.
survey says,
Yeah. Yeah.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like to phone a friend."
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that your final answer?
That's two back to back right there from that one.
Yeah. I'd like to buy a vowel. Uh, let's see, what was that? Deal
Or no
or
deal.
no deal?
Oh.
The tribe had spoken.
Ah. All right.
Yeah, uh, you're fired.
Yeah, I guess that is a game show, isn't it? Oh man,
Mhm.
there's certain
And
ones you
then
just
one,
don't think about.
and then one of mine from my childhood. One of my favorites is big bucks and no whammies.
No whammies, no whammy, no
Mm.
whammy, no
No whammy, no whammy, no whammy.
whammy.
And it's
That's
I
some
just
good ones. That's
it
some good ones,
just
man.
went down like, oh my gosh, these are things that if you hear, this is these were all stupid game shows.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but
Oh,
you go first this time. I usually go first because the young guy's going to take it first today. Do you remember like your first
uh,
know
yeah. It's
association with game shows?
man, it's more emotional than I thought it would be because
Hmm.
like I sitting here thinking about it. The first my grandmother, God rest her soul,
Hmm.
like every night when I would be over her house, would be watching. She'd have the tail end of Jeopardy on, but she was more of a Wheel of Fortune watcher, and
Hmm.
like had her beer, had her cigarette, was
Hmm.
ready to go watching Wheel of Fortune in her couch that was stationed right in front of the, or not even a couch, just an armchair stationed right in front of the TV. Uh, and would watch it all the time, and like would be over there and I remember trying to answer puzzles with her, and she was like the best at it, incredible at
Hmm.
it, and that's why there's like sort of an emotional attachment to that. Like I've
Hmm.
always loved Wheel of Fortune. Jeopardy, don't get me wrong, is great, but but like just what that right, like the family aspect of sitting there on the couch watching it, like it was me and her, and then obviously my mom, loved
Hmm.
it too. So like the fact that we always joked about doing the tryouts when like the family ones would come to town, um,
Yes.
and wanting to do like the you see the mother son or father daughter, like whatever it is, like we should go
Hmm.
on and do that. And we never have, but it's just one of those we love watching it and seeing who can get
Hmm.
the answer first,
You know,
figure it
you
out
have
quickest.
you've hit on something very interesting, is that it is generational, because
Hmm.
I think as a rule, a kid would not sit around and want to watch a game show.
Mm-mm.
But you see the excitement in your grandmother or your
Mm,
mom, and it became, that's what dinner was.
yeah. Yeah.
We eat dinner, and you know, uh, in our world, Wheel was first and Jeopardy
Yeah,
was
yeah, it flipped.
second.
And I always was
Yeah,
intrigued by that. You might
yeah,
think about that. There were
yeah.
out
And
here it was
there's,
always Jeopardy and then Wheel of Fortune, but
yeah,
like
ours
I've
is,
been DC, it was flipped around when we lived down
yeah,
there. It was Wheel of Fortune and then Jeopardy. It really threw me for a loop. First time I
yeah.
went to go watch and I saw Jeopardy on at 7:30 instead of 7. And
And
I was
there's
like, what
some
the heck's
weird
going on?
things where Jeopardy will show at 4 o'clock around here as well. And if you want to
Really?
really mess with them, yeah, it's the same episode, so you could watch it
Get
at
the
four
answers.
and dominate at 7:30.
Oh no.
But that's an awesome thing because, like, you're right, it is hey, Grandma, what are you watching?
Mhm.
Quiet. I'm watching Quiet.
Right. Huh?
And then the next thing you know, you get into it, and you're like, I don't know any of these puzzles because I'm too young.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you start
Oh,
seeing understanding the game, and it's passed down.
yep.
It's one of those things we don't do much as families. Once you get older, it's kind of but you have these great memories of childhood. Same deal.
Yeah.
I get my love of like cars and stuff from my dad,
Hmm.
but I get this my lifelong love of stupid game shows comes from my mom. And,
Oh.
and and you mentioned it's, I spent a summer when I was, I think, 13, turning 14, with my grandmother in
Mhm.
Texas. And same deal. The world stopped at they were east, they were
Central.
central, so
Yeah, yeah.
6 and six
Central.
thirty or
Yep.
whatever. It was a little earlier. But man, it stopped when those two shows were on, and you had to be quiet, you know
Yeah.
and it was great. But that's an interesting aspect of the generational,
Yeah.
like.
I mean, it was like it's kind of how they were passed down in
Hmm.
theory is just, who would be the fan of it in the house and then the kids kind of gather around and see what's going on and all of a sudden before you know it, it was like everyone was watching it. And
Yeah,
Yeah, we still to this day, it's not appointment viewing anymore for
Right.
sure. Um, but
Right.
it's still one of those things when it's on, or like you see it in pop culture, or like
Hmm.
some really bad answer happens and it gets out on social, right?
Yes.
It's one of those things we all talk about it, and or occasionally when I'm watching it and it's like, mom happens to call right at that time. It's like, hey, you watching Wheel? It's like,
It's
got it
great.
on. Let's get some good
Yeah.
puzzles going on.
But it's
Um,
just it's great background, for
yeah,
dinner or
absolutely,
whatever,
absolutely.
and it's fascinating that when you watch it today, like Jeopardy, for
Hmm.
example, who, we lost
Trebek.
Trebek a few years ago, and then Sajak has retired, so it's not
Hmm.
even the
I know,
same game
I
of our
know.
youth. It's still going, and you're still like, and granted, Jeopardy hit the jackpot with Ken Jennings is Jeopardy.
Hmm.
He made himself on that show, and he does very well. So that show,
Yeah,
you miss Alex Trebek, but it doesn't really miss a beat because
right.
you know. Well, I always joke around. Ken's reading these questions because he knows all the answers. So he's going to be like, "Yeah, no, you're wrong,"
No.
because I know them all.
Oh.
But it still holds up, and there's very few things that hold up like that.
Yeah,
I think it's
it's
funny. Like my, it's a little different. My generation, we had more daytime TV,
mhm.
and daytime TV. I don't even know what it is now, but
So, well, if it's you're talking 3610 or whatever the stations are, right? For us,
yeah,
it's
yes.
3610 for CBS, ABC,
Yeah.
NBC, but
Well, essentially, when the morning show, Good Morning Today, and
wraps
when
up.
it ended, what came on. And when I'm a kid, it's all game shows.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
There's
think CBS still does it. I think
yeah, there's two in
Wayne
there. So you
Wayne
get
Brady does Let's
yep,
Make a
yeah. Let's make a
Deal, and
deal,
then
followed
then we have
by
we have
Price
the
is Right.
iconic Price is Right still. But back then, everybody for that had
Hmm.
game shows. And I went back. What an incredible time we live in. I went back to Wikipedia, and they had the daytime what was on, and the amount of shows that I lived through this era, no clue what any of these were.
That's awesome.
And but what's wild is cable takes off in the mid '80s, and you have these general channels, like USA was a general channel. USA wasn't making original programming; they were just
Right?
trying to fill time. And I think they bought a bunch of these
Hmm.
mid '80s game shows to be able to
Interesting.
broadcast and fill up time. So a lot of these stupid, stupid game shows, do you know who? Here's an old guy talking. Do you know who Chuck Woolery is?
The name sounds familiar. I probably couldn't
Yeah,
pick him out of a lineup though.
yeah. Chuck Woolery was a staple of game shows. He may have even been the first Wheel of Fortune guy.
Yeah.
But he did I did a show called Love Connection, which was kind of a
Okay. Yeah.
modern dating show too,
Yep.
where he would go, we're back in two and two. But Chuck Woolery does a show called Scrabble based on the board game.
Hmm.
Nobody's ever heard of this game show. It ran for like 5 years
Wow.
on this. And the only reason I know it is because USA bought this and I got to watch all these things and this stupid show with tiles and crap.
Hmm.
That's another amazing thing. You can now go to YouTube and voila,
Watch all these.
all the Scrabble. Who recorded this crap? You know, who
Someone
has
someone illegally uploaded it that had all the tapes. That's
somebody
what in
had,
my head
but
what's going
you
on.
can go and watch
Yeah,
Scrabble on
that's
YouTube
awesome.
now, and it was like, oh my gosh! But once again, I guarantee they didn't pay much for it originally, and I guarantee they didn't sell it for much. And so USA's running a channel,
Hmm.
and it didn't cost much to buy all this when you got cheap inventory, and you just keep throwing it out there, and then they would eventually the cable channels would start making their own. Um, Lifetime
Yeah,
is Lifetime still a channel? I
I
mean,
think so. Yeah,
but they're known for like the Lifetime movies
movies.
and that.
Yeah. Hmm.
When I'm a kid, like Lifetime is game shows,
Hmm.
and I think the best of the modern game shows is Supermarket Sweep.
Oh my
That
gosh,
was
what a good one. Yeah,
that
that was
was
a good one.
that's a Lifetime show,
Yeah.
and that's an old show that they had revamped. But the
Uh,
modern version,
there was
I
an
say modern in
yeah,
the
right.
'90s, yeah.
There's another similar one with like Shop Till You Drop. Was that one
That
in
was
the
on.
mall?
That was a
Like based in a
Lifetime one as
mall?
well, where you would get packages and could run up and exchange them and all this
Yeah,
stuff.
at the
Yes,
mall. Like
that's
that was one of mine and my mom's favorites
there.
to
You
watch.
go.
So that's
If you
another
were
one.
to ask anybody if they remember a show called Shop Till You Drop, they're gonna be like, no
What the
shot.
heck? See, I got
But
some old timey stuff too.
I like it. I like it. But
That's a
that's a
good drop.
Lifetime show, and
Yeah.
Lifetime had another amazing show. Like Wink Martindale had this like iconic name, and he was producing a lot of these shows. But he had a show called Debt. And in the 90s, debt had it just skyrocketed through credit cards and stuff like that. So they did this game show based upon how much debt you had. And if you won,
Jesus,
they would
paid off.
pay off your debt.
Oh,
It
I
was
wonder why that won't
amazing.
come back today.
If you go back and watch that show, it is great. And what
Yeah.
was you talk about greed and gambling and stuff like
Yeah.
that. You get the debt paid, you get your debt paid off, and then at the end, you get to pick one pop culture question if you want, and you can bet
Oh no.
your debt for double.
Doubling it? Oh no.
Yes,
Oh
on a
jeez.
question that you got to pick. And it was like, this is genius because people were like, oh, yeah, I'm out of debt. I'm going for it. Oh,
Yeah,
you're
right.
wrong. And you walked out of there
The
with
ultimate.
nothing.
That's like double or nothing. It's
It
like,
is.
let's
It is
go.
exactly.
Are you gonna put all your money on red or black?
It's
So,
like, let's go after the human greed because, well, we're gonna have to pay all this stuff off. No, we are
nope.
not, because these people are
That's what
gonna
you
go,
think.
I would absolutely bet my debt, and we're gonna drop them with the craziest, hardest question they've ever
Oh,
heard.
that's
I loved
amazing.
it. But that
Well,
was, that
you
was what
mentioned
Lifetime was to me.
you mentioned Lifetime. For a time there was an entire channel dedicated to game show, the Game Show Network. I don't know.
Still
Do you
there.
remember? Yeah, so like it's
Oh,
still a thing, right? So they've got. I imagine at this point it's all reruns. I don't know that there's
no, they
original
do their own
programming.
program. They do their
Do they?
own. Yeah.
Man,
So this is letting you in behind the curtain of the Marsh
yeah,
household. That's probably the most watched channel in my
that's
house.
awesome. That's so good.
But and the only reason I say that is because the TV's not on during the day.
Uh-huh.
When we eat dinner, we want something on, and a lot of times it's mindless entertainment. So you turn the TV on to Game Show Network, and you're going to get one of their modern game shows, and they've got a few
Okay,
really good modern game shows.
that's awesome.
Um, yeah, like Ken Jennings was on one for a while where they got these super smart people, and you could challenge them. They called it Masterminds.
Hmm. Oh
Masterminds
yeah, yeah, yeah.
is a
Okay.
great show. The Switch, I call it a game show for those who don't know anything. That one's but that's a
Okay.
modern one. They
Nice.
also had the updated version. So Family Feud is on the Mount Rushmore as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Family Feud
absolutely.
is an iconic show. So a game show built a show called America Says, which I call it. It's a modern day version because it's a survey type
Oh,
show, and you're trying.
okay.
They just put a clock to it, so you don't
Yeah.
get an ultimate.
That's awesome.
You have to come up with the
Within a
answers
certain
quick.
time.
Yeah, but that's a great one as well. So
That's
yeah, the
awesome.
unfortunately I
Well,
spent a lot of time
eh,
watching the
glad
Game
to see
Show
it's one of those
Network.
the GSN.
Before we move on, I thought this was interesting too because granted we talk about the big three: CBS, NBC,
Yep.
ABC, and all these things,
Yep.
but we talked about Lifetime and stuff like that. Did you know
Ooh, love it.
ESPN had game shows as well?
I feel like yes. I couldn't name one.
Yeah,
But it'll probably be one of those things where the second you say it, it'll
this
turn
is
off a light bulb for
I
me.
think this is pre Little Rob here,
Okay.
but at one point in time, uh, there was a minor league ball club in Florida that decided to mix their minor league ballpark with an amusement park. So the ballpark was here. It had you went past left field and there was the amusement park. If you bought a ticket to the amusement park, you could go to the game. It's called Boardwalk and Baseball.
Hmm.
And ESPN had a sports bowl of sports trivia called Boardwalk and Baseball's Sports Super Bowl of Sports Trivia.
That's
I even think it's like Berman,
just
an early
rolls off the
Berman.
tongue.
Oh, it does. But it's out there on
the
YouTube to watch as well.
well, the one that comes to mind for me, and I think it was game show based, was Stump the Schwab.
That's a more
Um,
modern.
right?
But there is that was another attempt. But there was one previously
Hmm.
that it gosh, it was so good it destined to fail. I don't know why it failed, but what they did, Cheers, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, and Cheers is great. It's a bar with just a cast of characters, and they're always
Yep.
talking about questioning each other, right?
Yep.
Well, ESPN thought, what a great place for a game show. So they had a show called Sports on Tap. And the premise was you walked into the bar and we're going to pick four people and we're going to have a trivia contest at the bar. And
That's
there was a
awesome.
bit of cheese involved because
Sure.
it's half TV show, half like the bartender's doing shtick up
Yeah.
there, and but at the end of the day, it is a trivia show in a bar, with sports questions,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it only makes it maybe a season, but it was another one that was like, man, what a cool
Wow.
idea, and it couldn't have cost them anything,
No.
I mean, I think they were given. I don't even think you won anything. I think they were only going to give the money to one person. Like you had
Right.
to win multiple rounds.
That's wild.
That's one, and that one, like I say, that one's out there.
Yeah.
And when we think of MTV now, MTV is much more about shows. They don't, you know, there's a reason it's not music television anymore because it just switched. But when I was a kid,
Oh,
the first MTV game show was called Remote Control.
okay.
And Remote Control is the springboard of, Colin Quinn. I think he
Yep.
did the news on SNL
Yep.
for a while, his stand up. He is on the show. A little guy named Adam Sandler,
Oh,
who looks to be
name
about
sounds familiar.
12 on this show. He
Wow.
is on the show. And essentially it was a game show based around MTV. So you were sitting in this guy's basement and he had a big TV and you would push the
The
remote
remote.
control in it and it would change the channel. It's a great one too. It's
Yeah.
well worth the watch to go back and watch this one on YouTube. But all these different shows, because these guys had grown up with game
Right.
shows as well.
Right.
And so they were trying, and
Pulled into it.
remote control was big enough. This is going to blow your mind here that they actually made a Nintendo game called Remote Control.
Okay.
Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES
Yeah.
there's remote control for the NES.
See, you mentioned
So
that. Now I'm being reminded of there are I think I had on the first PlayStation a Wheel of Fortune
Wheel of
like
Fortune,
right? So
Jeopardy.
there are
Yes,
video games out of game shows and that's where it
there
gets
are
interesting to me.
definitely, you know, uh,
The
Pictionary is
crossover.
a yeah, Pictionary is a board game, but they
Yeah.
made this is wild. Burt Reynolds actually did this. They made a nightly game show kind of based on it. They
Yeah.
called it Win, Lose, or
They're
Draw.
all yeah,
And the,
absolutely.
the
Yep.
premise was that you were hanging out in Bert's living room
Yeah. Playing
and
Pictionary.
we're playing Pictionary. Yeah.
It's
They called it
incredible.
Win, Lose, or Draw. I'm pretty sure they made an NES Win, Lose, or Draw
That's
game too.
that's
So,
awesome. That feels like one of
so
those. I think it was the Wii U or something. Like has the screen you could draw on or something like that. That attach Nintendo was all those peripherals that you could just attach to whatever,
yes.
right? And have fun with. But you mentioned the like off channel
Mm-hmm.
game shows, and I mean, we talk about the big ones, and as you know,
Mm-hmm.
we've mentioned them, but the ones that stand out to me, and kind of, I don't want to say define my childhood, but like at the same time, you talk to any millennial about the game shows they recall, the
Mm-hmm.
game shows you're going to get are the ones that ran on Nickelodeon.
Mm-hmm.
For as much as it was a cartoon after school show and you had your Rugrats, you had, everything else that was, you know, uh, playing Hey Arnold and all the, Ren and Stimpy,
Sure.
whatever it might be, right? It was the game shows that stand out to me that I think defined I will call it the adolescent years, and
Sure.
it's the things like that you always wanted to be on. That was the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah.
So as much as like for adults, it was the Wheel of Fortunes and Jeopardies that you want to be on, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
I think there's that relatable aspect to it. Nickelodeon game shows were just like the ultimate, like that is so cool, like I want to do that factor, and um, there were so many that I can think of, but there is one that I wish I had a shirt for it because it's
Mm-hmm.
it's a popular sort of my age. When you want to dress up for Halloween, like people dress up for it.
Uh-huh.
An easy T-shirt to get. But Legends of the Hidden Temple
Legends of the
is
Hidden
an
Temple.
absolute classic. You talk to anyone around, probably around my age, maybe a little younger, maybe a couple years older as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it was Olmec and this just giant stone face that he ran through all sorts of mythology, and every episode was geared towards like some artifact or something that these teams, all these teams. You had the orange silver snakes. That was like my favorite. You had a favorite team too. That was the
Oh,
other part of it.
wow.
I always wanted to be a silver snake if I was ever going to be on Legends of the Hidden Temple. But the like orange iguanas and blue barracudas and like all these team names that went through a very similar series of challenges, and it would like cut the number of teams in half. So like they always had to, the first one was like they had to cross a pond or something like that and tap the gong at the end of the course, get both people on to the other side of the platform. So they had to like cross this moat to get into Olmec's temple.
Wow.
And then they would go down steps and have to answer questions. And at the end of it, and then there would be some like physical challenge too, between the two final teams. And then the winning team would go into the temple and they'd have to run through the temple. And it was like a maze that had all these same rooms every week. And the temple guards that could capture you. And throughout the game, you would earn like the life tokens and things like that.
Hmm.
So if you did get captured in the temple, you could give that to them and you could still go. It was like an extra
Yeah.
life. But one person would go first, and then once that person was captured and out of lives, the other person would go, and it was like a 90-second thing, I think, where they
Hmm.
had to like go through the rooms, find the artifact, whatever room the artifact was hidden in, and run out of the temple. And then if they get it, you win all these prizes, and it was like all the kid-based things, like the space camp or whatever it might be, and
You're getting a boombox,
yeah,
and
something like along those
and then it
lines.
works its way up to space camp.
But
Yeah.
it was just like the most enthralling 30 minutes for a kid.
Wow.
The stories were cool, but like it was just, getting mad at them for not knowing how to put together the monkey in
Come
the monkey room,
on.
right? Like
Yes.
it's three pieces, put the base
Come
down the middle and
on.
the head. Like it's not hard. But there was that, and it was, I mean, an iconic show to begin with, but
Hmm.
it's one of those things where I don't think it did well when so within the last 2 or 3 years, it came back, and it was like a
Okay.
Netflix thing or like what
Gotcha.
Hulu or something like that. They put out a call for tryouts for people that wanted to like go on an adult version of Legends of the Hidden Temple, and they brought it back. But like that's one of those shows where that for me was appointment watching as a child.
Wow.
But I mean, it like, one of the most iconic, but I think about some of the others that Nickelodeon had, and it was like Double Dare. It was,
Yeah.
Mark Summers was just,
Oh,
a guy that made it. I don't know if he made his name on that channel. He probably had a career before then, but like that's where I know him from.
no,
You
that's
had
where you
Double
know him
Dare
from.
and Guts, which was just like
Oh,
the aggro crag. They had to like climb this mountain, and do this like so many good game shows. And then you had like there's the video game ones as well, Nick Arcade, where it would like put kids in to a video game, and they would like have
yeah.
to, it looked like Frogger. They'd have to like I'm sure they were like staring. Actually, there is some really funny behind the scenes footage of how Nick Arcade was made, and it was like these
Uh-huh.
kids staring at this tiny little like 10-inch screen, and they're in front of a green screen, and they have to like bounce and move, and but like
Oh my
looked cool as
goodness.
heck on TV. But so many cool shows like that I think of as a kid that defined you had your standards, your nightlies that you would know about, but
Hmm.
like those were the game shows that I think of.
Now
And
that's
were
I
so
love
cool.
that you dropped Mark Summers' name because a lot of times the only people know Mark Summers today is from the clip. I think he gets into a fight with Burt Reynolds on the
He
Today
does,
on the
yeah,
Tonight Show,
yeah, yep,
and they
yeah.
they walk it off and they smash each other with pies or something like that. And I would venture a guess, you're going to get to
Oh,
the point where nobody knows who Burt Reynolds is, but there ain't no way you knew who
yep.
the other guy was. But
No.
so Double Dare comes out in like '86. I was 13,
Mm-hmm.
so I know Double Dare very well. That
Yep.
was, what you were talking about. It sounds like my experience with Double Dare because once again, being with your mom, your grandmother, whatever, you loved game shows, and these were kids on it, and kids
Mm-hmm.
were not on game shows.
No.
That was
No.
not a thing, And so you're watching like, oh my gosh, and they're asking kid questions. It's like in Star Wars, what is C-3PO's buddy's name? And you're like, it's R2D2. It's R2D2.
R2D2. Come on.
It's R2D2. I know the answer to this.
Oh,
But no,
that's
it's
awesome.
so what's wild is it looks like the hidden. What was your show?
Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Legends of the Hidden Temple starts in '93,
Mm-hmm.
which is I'm 20, which is
Five.
whoop, I had
Yeah.
probably
Yep.
I had not watched Nickelodeon since the Double Dare days. So it's very rare that you stump me, but I have never heard of what you were
Yeah.
talking about. And
Oh,
it sounds amazing. It
it
sounds like
is
they took
incredible.
like the Legend of Zelda and an adventure and all these and made them a real life game.
It
It's like, oh,
was
let's go into these.
so cool. It
I
like
can't I
absolute
can't even
favorite game
imagine
show.
how neat that would have been, especially like I say for that age group that it's built for. That would have been incredible.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
good stuff.
that's awesome. So you got the kids, you got the like I say the random channels. We'll talk a little bit about the Mount Rushmore, and my Mount Rushmore is obviously Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune.
Mhm.
I think Family Feud goes up there as well. Family Feud has been around forever. I can sit there for an hour and watch stupid Family Feud answers on a phone.
They're my favorite. Oh my
It is the
God.
greatest thing
Yeah.
ever. I mean, the poor porcupine guy who, you know, it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And this poor guy has to live with porcupine for the rest of his life. It's like, oh my
There's
gosh.
there's
But
another good one. Steve it's a Steve Harvey episode, but it's I forgot what the question was. Something along the lines like what can't you have without this you can't have a wedding ceremony or something like that. And
hmm
this guy says he's saying pastor, but he's
uh-huh.
like the priest, right? To do
Yeah.
the thing. But he's got an accent and it
hmm
sounds like he's saying pasta.
Oh yeah,
He said pasta.
pasta.
And Steve
Yeah.
looks at him like spaghetti? Like you can't
Yeah.
have a wedding ceremony without spaghetti? Like what do you
Oh
And then everyone's like,
yes.
"Oh,
Yes, it was
that's
like
what
the
you're
full. It
saying."
was like he had gone to another country to do some
Right.
Family Feud
Yeah. And they say
episodes. It's like the pasta.
the pasta.
Yeah, the oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I got you. Yeah,
Oh, and
yeah.
just the
But
way
it's
Steve's
so.
reactions are incredible.
But that show is
Oh,
built for the
yeah.
modern time. These crazy answers. But and then the fourth obviously is Price is Right, which
Yeah.
I think is it was like I think it was a show in maybe the 50s or something like that. And they used the name when they came back, maybe 72,
Mhm.
but they had completely changed the game. And to be honest, I'm going to say from that point forward, it's pretty much so the same game
Yeah.
that we have today.
You
And,
can't there's not many game shows you could point to that haven't changed in some way or tried to modernize. And
no,
that one modernized itself back in the
it,
day, right?
it did, but and
But
it
it's
updates itself, and the idea
occasionally
of
here and there.
yeah, but like and when I say it updates itself, Plinko's now worth $100,000 as opposed to five
Right,
thousand dollars,
right. And there's
and
some
so
quirky new games that get introduced here and there, but
sure,
like
sure, but the
it's
little Alpine guy, he's yeah, he's yodeling up the
Yodel
thing,
guy.
and the putt game, and
Yeah.
all these things are just like iconic. But that show is such ingrained in. You'll still to this day hear people. Yeah, I was out sick, so I got to watch The Price is Right.
Mm-hmm.
In the world we
Oh, it's
live
my
in, you
favorite
can
thing.
watch anything at any time. But yeah, this is what you think about when you're going to be out sick. Is I get to
Yeah.
watch The Price is Right. I'm like, oh, technically, you can watch it anytime you want now because we can DVR anything and anything's on streaming and you can rewatch anything and it doesn't matter what time it comes on. But I always think that's funny is that's what people associated with is being
Hmm.
sick and being able to watch The Price is
Yeah.
Right. And like you say, there's all these things the iconic wheel, the tags.
Yeah.
They've been using those same tags forever and never and never, and it's like, gosh, what an incredible jackpot they hit.
Yeah.
You know?
So I'll give you my Mount Rushmore, and then
Okay.
we'll circle back because
Yeah.
we'll see why. Um, the the two. I don't think you have a true Mount Rushmore if you don't have Wheel of Fortune and I'm gonna say Game of Thrones,
hmm
Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. They define what game shows are or
Yep.
what they should be. For me, you heard me just dive into it. Legends of the
Sure.
Hidden Temple is on there, just for what it means to me personally,
hmm
and how ingrained and invested I was in it. And then I'm with you on so 3 out of 4 match. Price is Right is on there
hmm
too. And it's just one of those shows, whether it was like you were sick as a kid or for me when I worked at Target and had like the in the middle of the day, shift, I would make
Yes.
sure my lunch was at noon or a little bit before or whatever it was, and
Yeah.
in my break so that I could catch at least a little bit of it
Sure.
because it was just so awesome. And I think you mentioned it. It's that same way for a lot of people where a lot of people enjoy it. A lot of people, participate in it, via their TV screen or whatever it might be. And, um, I don't know what the percentage of the population that can say they've been in the room for it, but I think only one of us. Correct me if I'm wrong, but only one of the two of
I
us has
I
been
I have not been in
in
that
the.
room.
Not even, well, how about like more broadly speaking? Have you ever been in the room for a game show?
I have been in the room for shows.
Yeah,
I did Conan one
that's
time.
awesome. That's pretty
I've
cool.
done shows, and it's fascinating
Hmm.
because the room is much smaller than it looks and that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
no, I have never been in the Price is Right room. I've
Well,
never been on the towards the Bob Barker studio.
you mentioned the
Have
name tags.
Yeah,
So I kind of want to
yeah,
wear it, but if you're watching
dude.
the video version,
As
um,
soon as you see that, you know what it is.
right? But
Yes,
it still fits.
that's amazing.
It was there's obviously a story behind it, right? So
Yeah.
um it was over the spring break of senior year of college. And for the wife, now it was her graduate year. And
Okay.
um the she was in a course in college that, like, it was like a fifth year master kind of deal. And one of the things they got to do was go present at a conference out in Seattle, and it happened to be over spring break. And so they flew out, her and her, all her friends that were part of the presentation,
Yeah.
flew out to Seattle. And then we had a friend that, after they graduated, it was like same year as my wife, so she's a year ahead of me. This other friend that was in the group did not participate in that master's program, but was living out in California, LA specifically. And so we were like, well, we're going to make a trip out of this since it's over spring break. And um, went, booked everything. So, so they're all out there. I'm still in Pittsburgh. And it's a ridiculous story. I missed my flight. It was a morning flight. I forgot about this until I started recounting the story. Missed my flight because I overslept, and like there's one bus at the back of campus that would take you to the airport. So I got the next one, sprinted to the airport, whatever, and was able to change my flight. Thankfully, this was at a time before, the airports were as insane as they were, but like got on a new flight, got out there, met them and all that good stuff. But we went out there obviously to see our friend and hang out in LA and see all the good stuff, but
Obviously.
obviously, but with a stated goal of going to the Price is Right. Like we knew
Yes.
it was during a time when filming was happening, and they do two a days, but um, it was going to happen. Like we made a point.
Hmm.
Everyone was in on it. There was about six or seven of us that were going. And so our friend that lived in LA knew someone that had done it. So we got the inside scoop that,
How to do this? Yeah,
how
that's
to get
great.
in there. So they opened the lot at like 4 a.m. or something, like very early.
Ooh.
So we knew it was going to be a day. And she was like, when you get there, you just got to be loud. You got to be obnoxious. You got to be the one starting the chants, like all this stuff.
Okay.
Draw the
Yeah.
attention, because from the time you enter the lot until you get your ticket, you're in line, all that stuff, it is an audition.
You're
Like
auditioning
full time
immediately.
is an audition.
Wow.
So like the night prior, before we even show up there, I probably still have it in a drawer somewhere, and I wish I could have found it before this, but I'll have to post pictures or something. We made shirts to stand out in the
Nice.
crowd.
Yes.
We had group shirts. We drew them in they were bright yellow. We used like the stuff that would stick on the shirt, and like drew the skyline of Pittsburgh, because we were all,
Nice.
went to, not from
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, but went to school there. It was Drew
Yeah.
Carey. So we knew he was from Cleveland. We were like, hey, Drew, Pittsburgh still loves you, something like that. And
Yes.
just like, even to go deeper into this, like we knew everyone knows what the items are on Price is Right. So,
Hmm.
um, and I'm not talking the cars. I'm talking like the little things that are part of the game, like the little things that get your guesses or help you
Yeah.
get more chances at whatever it is. We went, knowing that California is California. We went to a local grocery store and walked up and down aisles and studied prices to just give ourselves a chance. We went to the vitamin aisle and checked out the Centrum Silver and the Bayers, aspirins, and
Yes.
like the prices of bread, the milk, like all of this stuff.
The
'Cause we knew that it
spaghetti
wasn't the
sauce.
same of
That's
whatever it was.
amazing.
I mean, we studied.
That's awesome.
It was so cool. But we get in. You're not allowed to bring anything in, and it's your phones and whatever. You got to leave them at the gate. Get inside, sit down, and I mean, you talk about a whirlwind of an experience. Like, not only I wasn't personally on, but the last person of the first set of four to get called down was someone from our group. It was just like it's one of those things. They have name cards. Like you hear Greg, I think is the guy's name that does um, the studio,
The
announcements.
modern guy,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
So
not Rod Roddy anymore, who's
no,
died.
it's not. But like,
It's
so he's saying the names, and you can kind of hear, but they've got someone down on stage that's holding cue cards with the names.
oh,
So I mean, it's
nice.
obviously already picked out, right? So,
Right.
they're flipping through the cards, showing the names. The last one called is the person from our group, and we're like, what? It's just like unreal to begin with, and then like gets down there. First set of things come up. I forget what it was exactly. It was like a tent, like an outdoor tent or something like that. Um, and
Not
she's
something
first to
that was at the
go.
grocery store,
No,
though.
it wasn't. But the great thing is like nothing that we had studied ended up being anything that had to do with anything.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. So she gets the unfortunate the last one called down is the first one
Oh.
to give the price. Goes first is like $800 or something like that.
Mm.
Everyone else after her went underneath. They're like, there's no way this
Ah.
tent costs a lot of money. Tent ends up being 1,200. Gets onto the show. So like
Oh
not even
my
just
gosh.
first one down onto the show, goes up, and like at this point, it's just euphoria. Like we're
Well,
all
I was going
losing
to
our
say
minds.
you're within 2 minutes of the
Walking
show
into the
started,
studio, and she's
and
on.
voila,
It's
she's
like,
on.
right? Not even
That's
getting called down,
unreal.
like on the stage now,
She is
hugging
on
Drew.
the stage. Like
Um, and you know how
how
they
did you
love,
do this?
right? And you know how they love
Yeah.
to start shows with a bang. So like it's like, hey, great to have you on. Like, we're all the way on this side. I don't know why we're all the way here over here. So like, Greg, why don't you tell us? She's like, well, why don't we start with a new car? It's like, oh, like what the hell? Like you go to the Price is Right. Everyone, all you think about is winning a car, and that's what the
Oh
first
my
game is.
gosh.
You know, I mean, it's unreal. I could recap the whole experience, but to summarize, wins the car. To just right to the punchline, wins the car. It was like a true or false game about the prices of
Oh,
like
okay.
some insane products. She got every single one of them right, and there were 5 prices of the car listed, and
Mm-hmm.
so she got 4 guesses at the prices. And Drew was like, "If you mess this up, you're like this will go down as like one of the worst guessing games ever." Gets it on the third one.
Uh-huh.
So there's a little bit of risk there.
Come on now. Come on. Yeah.
Wins the car.
Oh
And
my
obviously, as
goodness.
anyone that gets up on stage, you get to go to the wheel, spin the wheel. Gets to the showcase wheel spinning thing, and like I don't remember what the total was, but gets to the showcase showdown. Like is the one to go on, out of her group of 3. And it was one of those doesn't win the spoiler alert, doesn't win the showcase, but it was like just absolute insanity the entire time. We're like freaking out in the stands, and you get to go back and watch. Obviously, it's not live; it's a filmed
Mm-hmm.
show, so we get to go back and watch later. And it's just constant camera cuts back and forth between her and us, and watching her go through the showcase. It was like during Final Four. It was an episode that was going to air during the NCAA Final Four week.
Mm-hmm.
So her showcase that she doesn't win, unfortunately, ends up being like courtside Final Four seats, another car, like all of this stuff. The stay, I think it was in Indy at the time, that Final Four. So, it would have been like however many nights stay at the hotel and accommodate, like all that sort of stuff, and just an insane showcase and like way underbid it. So, is what it is. But like, what an experience! We get our phones back. They hand them back, and she has to sign all these disclaimers not to say anything. We get our phones back. We're calling everyone we know. Like, the Price is Right. Like this happened, and it was an unbelievable experience, and this and that, and oh my God, what a whirlwind of a day! Like an experience I will never
Oh,
forget. And
so
obviously still have momentum
still, yeah,
from.
but the tech nerd in me definitely has questions.
Oh yeah.
So do you remember how long it took? I mean, are we talking months? What are we talking
From
here
when it was
before
filmed
when
to
you
when it aired.
recorded to when it actually aired?
I think like 2 months.
Two
Because we went
months.
out over spring break, right? So it would have
Mm-hmm.
been, I think February, like mid
Okay.
February. And that episode was a Final Four episode. So,
So
you know, it aired April 4th or 2nd of
do
that
do
year.
they have an indication like when you go in and say we're taping for April
They
4th? Do they
do. Yeah,
tell
they
you?
tell you the day that the episode's
Okay.
going to air so you can go watch.
Interesting.
There's two tapings a day. So there was a
Okay.
morning and an early morning. So we were like
Hmm.
the early morning, and then there was one right after. So we
Okay.
leave and they go right into the next one.
Gotcha.
And I don't know how long they do it for, but like you know the stretch runs of recording in the studio, but um, no, it was pretty cool. And then like
And you
halfway through, Drew comes up and like walks through the audience and says hi to
okay.
everyone. And
Yes.
I don't remember if my shirt's signed. I think a couple of our people got
Yeah.
our shirts signed, but like he walks around, says hi, and obviously recognized our crew because our friend was up there, and
Right.
so came and talked to us, and it was just like just a wild experience, man.
So
It was so
is
cool.
it the real time recording, meaning that it's an hour that you're in there? Like
Yeah, yeah. So that
it's
they make the commercial breaks, right? So they
right,
let you know when it's on and off and that sort of thing. But
but
like
they
it's
take the two
basically,
and a half minutes for commercials as
yeah.
well. They
There
okay.
and there was,
And
I mean, it's not live. It's like this. Like, hey, if we screw
right.
up, I
Yeah,
don't know that we've ever screwed up and gone back and done anything, but like, because we're so professional.
we are.
But the show at any point, if they had to stop and start over, they could.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
but we went right through. They've got all the indicators of like, hey, cheer. This is when you cheer. This is when you got to be quiet. That sort of stuff. The lights and of everything, applaud and scream and yell and all that sort of stuff. So
Do you remember how long you had to be in before the show started? Did they when they
from
pulled
when
you
we
into?
sat down,
Yeah, yeah, like
it felt like
when
immediate. Like it
okay,
felt like they filled up. I mean, they're filling up the studio, so like when we
sure.
get in, it takes a little bit of time to get the people seated and everything like that. But it was like once we sat, it was go time. They did
So
not waste
no
a minute.
no warm up to get you guys rolling or anything like that.
Little
You
bit,
have a
like
you have a
like
comedian
hey,
come out and
just
warm you up
no,
or
nothing like that. You
okay,
didn't see Drew until like he walks out.
gotcha.
But the Greg or whatever the guy's name is, like he was
Yeah,
your warm up in essence. So
gotcha.
he's telling the
Very good.
crowd, like giving them kind of the instructions, lay of the land and that
Yeah,
sort of thing. And but from there, it's the show. Like
that's
it just
awesome,
rolls,
man.
and it was incredible. I don't think I
What
could tell you anything else that happened on the show outside of like the
you
moments that
just remember
involved our
that?
friend.
Yes,
But like
yes.
it was, I found it on YouTube, so it exists.
That's once again
At this point I'll
everything.
probably have like played clips over top of it, but like
Sure,
the ability to go back and watch, what happened and see us on TV and that sort of thing is just wild to begin with. But
that's
I do know, like,
incredible.
since we were still in school, like our school paper got in touch with her and did a write up on her. She was the city paper also did something like, hey, local girl wins car, um, that sort of stuff, and
Incredible.
it's just unreal.
That
Like
is
it's
incredible.
unreal. Oh, one of those
But
things I will
but
never forget.
what's amazing is like we're very. It's a weird time to live right now. Everything is very. I won't say fractured, but it's just tough. We're all kind of There's not much that unites us anymore.
Game shows
Man,
can.
game shows still do it.
Yeah.
Everybody's when you hear this Price is Right story, everybody, you're going to tell a story, and everybody's going to be like, "That's amazing. I can know exactly what he's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Can you imagine going through that?
Mm,
That's because everybody knows that crazy little game show. They know the
yeah.
format. They know exactly what you're talking about. You don't have to explain anything. It's like, oh wow, of course they went under. Why did they go 801? Everybody knows you go one over. And you're just like,
Right. Like I
this is
can't believe no one we were shocked no one did that. No
yes.
one was like
It's
801.
I mean
Oh,
this game is easy. 800, 801, 802,
803.
803.
Oh man. Well,
That's wild.
the interesting thing here too is as we try to land this plane
Hmm.
is, to the point of like they have game shows have evolved, but like the formula of them, fairly consistent. As far as it's concerned, the makeup of a game show is concerned. There's some challenge, some sponsorships, some this that. Got to do something and maybe win a prize.
Right.
Um, Eras of game shows and how like where would you want to be? Like, well, was it the game shows of many years ago?
Yeah.
Game shows of your grown up era? Like,
It's an interesting
how do you
point.
look at
Like if so like we didn't even hit on this, but game shows skyrocket in the 50s because they're giving away money and this is amazing. And and then come to find out they're rigged.
Yeah.
And
Oh, there's a great is it a
quiz
Netflix
show.
documentary? Is
There's a Netflix that, but quiz show is a
that what it is?
movie
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the early '90s that is incredible. I
And
actually think is nominated for Best Picture, but it highlights
the rigged nature of them.
this rigged game show, and they found out, and it was crazy that when they had certain people as their champion, they got better ratings.
Mm-hmm.
So they had this guy that wasn't very likable, and like we gotta
Get
get
them
rid of this
in.
guy, and they bring this guy in, and the next thing you know, well, the guy who got booted knows because he was in on it as well, and so he's gonna sing to everybody, and it it
Mm-hmm.
it brings them down for a while, and we don't have game shows in for a while because of the
That.
scandal aspect of
Yeah.
it, and I think that's part of what I like now about they'll have disclaimers. You mentioned it, for example, that the portions not affecting the outcome were re-recorded,
Yeah.
meaning they may have had a goof with something. Somebody face plants running down the aisle. I imagine they would.
Right. I
They
don't
don't want to,
know. I kind of want that. But yeah,
possibly.
I get what you're
But
saying.
you see it in
Yeah.
the credits, and so
Yeah.
because they want to be on the up and up, like
Yeah.
they want this to
They're not
be,
rigged.
hey, this is not rigged,
Mhm.
But they definitely found out, Jeopardy for a long time. You had 5 days. That's all you had, and when your 5 days were done, you were gone. And they realized, wait a minute, we're actually building characters. People love these
Yeah.
folks after 5 days, and so they change it. And who shows up? Ken
Ken
Jennings, and he's on there
changes the game.
forever, and he does, and it becomes like, oh wow, who can beat him?
Hmm.
And then you get other people that show up, and these people turn this into their life. Ken Jennings is now super famous because he was on Jeopardy for a while, and he does other game shows.
Hmm.
You have had others that follow him. It's
Oh,
fascinating, that sort of stuff.
the Watson episode. Like they try to beat Watson, and I think he does. Doesn't they do beat it,
he, he may
right?
do that.
Like terribly.
Yes.
Like it's just
But
bad. But
I think it was it James. I
uh
have trouble with
yeah, I
his
can't
name.
remember his last
Holzheisen.
name. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
the gambler out of Vegas who just knows so much about so much,
Hmm.
and he came on and was a phenomenon because he played the game different. This game had been playing the same way.
Yeah.
And,
Like top to bottom.
$100, 200, 300, thousand.
Bouncing
Like,
around.
why are you going to the bottom? Well, I'm
Yep.
looking for I want to build money, and then I want to find the daily double. And you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's figured out a new way to play Jeopardy.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. So the games are still evolving, but if the '70s are an explosion of game shows as well because we had not had them for a while, so that's a good era. And the '80s, they're terrible, but man, that's what I grew up in. But
Yeah.
even today, like there'll be a stupid game show on today, but it's still based in knowledge, and I think that has something to do with why we like them as well.
Hmm.
Is like
Test your knowledge, right?
it does, and
Yeah.
so you're like for example, what we have today, Beat Shazam, for example, is essentially name that
Yeah.
it's name that
Yeah.
tune from the '70s,
Yep.
and it's like, well, that's great. Netflix had The Floor is Lava,
Yeah.
which is a
Oh,
game you
that was
played
so
as
good. That was a
kid.
good
It
show.
was so good,
Yeah.
and then Fox has it's such a stupid title, but it's the quiz with balls. You ever seen the
Yeah.
quiz with balls
Yeah.
where you have to answer questions? If you
They
don't, the
drunk.
ball rolls down and
Yep.
drops you in the water. I mean,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, it is still a quiz show that you
Yeah.
have to know some sort of knowledge. And I think that's why I like them so much is that
Yeah.
it does still
They're timeless.
reward knowledge.
Yeah.
It rewards, knowing something, and that that's cool. What era would be the best? That's tough because like I say, in the '80s, I had in late '80s, early '90s, you had all those stupid game shows that I gravitate towards. But what's wild in this, which we can't say in other things, is in the '80s, I had Wheel of Fortune at 7 and Jeopardy at 7:30. And in 2025, I have Wheel of Fortune at 7 and Jeopardy
Yeah.
at 7:30.
Yep.
I had Price is Right at 11 o'clock on the weekdays in the '80s and '90s. What time is Price is Right? Is at 11 o'clock. That is, of all the things that we've done, nothing has that where
Mhm.
as much as things change,
Right. They
They're
stay the
still the same.
same.
And
Yeah.
so, hey, I hate, um, life is undefeated. We're all going to die. And you hate, Alex Trebek was like even he's Canadian, but he's this
Yeah.
American icon, right? And it
Hmm.
stinks to see him not there, but there's something beautiful about it keeping going in the same sense. It hasn't changed. It's
Yeah.
still going. And so I don't know. I love the game shows of my time, but
It's
there's
hard to
something,
answer.
it
It
is
really
hard to
is.
answer.
Like, I don't
And
think we've ever stumped ourselves,
no,
but
but I
like,
do love the fact that today we're still watching the
mm,
exact same show and people are still excited. And you just told a story of something that you did, 15 years ago or whatever, that was like the most amazing thing ever. If you did it today, it would still
same
be the
experience.
most, it'd be
It
the
would be.
exact same experience.
Yeah.
And there's not much in life that's like that. It's
No.
not much that, and so that's why this is a very interesting topic, and it's,
Like I said the word, but I'll say it again. It's timeless. Like
it
it's
is
just one of those things
timeless.
where for certain aspects of it, like it's aging like a fine wine.
It
You
is.
could
And it's like,
still enjoy it. Like, I don't want to relate them to soap operas because they're not, but at the same time, like the knock on soap operas, but in like a good way, is that you could hop in at any time and still
sure,
understand what's going on.
still understand exactly what's
The
going
knock
on.
on wrestling is you could hop on it at any time and understand what's going on. The game shows, you can hop in at any time and enjoy them
You
and
can.
love everything about them, how they're like just the way they unfold and all of that good stuff. So I mean, it's true.
It
like
is.
there's
And
not an era that stands out. Like if anything, the only thing I could think of is like, hey, I'd love to go back and be a kid and watch Legends of the Hidden
or
Temple again,
or be a
right?
kid and be on it.
Or be on it, right? But even that, it's like I could still, just go back and watch and have those thoughts and dreams and
Well,
um but
let me ask this, and this is how, obviously I think both of us are going to say the same, that it's pretty tough to pick an era for this particular topic, but have you showed your children this
that
show
episode.
yet?
Not yet. No,
No,
that's
and
gonna
I'm not
happen.
talking about The Price is Right. I'm talking
Yeah.
about your Nickelodeon show that you love so much.
Oh,
Have
yeah,
you showed
Legends.
them? Yes.
So no, but like our 8-year-old is probably at a point where I could and like enjoy it
And
and see what
that
he
would be
thinks.
interesting to see because a
I'll have
lot of
to
times when you
report back.
show, hey, this was my favorite movie as a kid, and they're like, this is
Yeah.
terrible. Or, this is my favorite song as a kid. This is terrible. There's something to be said of like that's an adventure type game. The
Yeah.
kids still love
If you
adventure,
would enjoy
and
it.
yes. So that's another one
Well,
that
hey,
shows that they're timeless.
the game show eras will continue on for sure. And I don't think we'll see an end to them anytime soon, as long as there's still a TV and screens that we can watch. So
And advertisers that want to get
yeah, correct.
their grocery products in front of their Centrum and
That's
their
awesome.
spaghetti sauce and
Whatever it might be. But hey, no, this was an awesome topic to dive into, man. Enjoyed it, and it's a good
yes.
chance to tell stories and look back. But appreciate all y'all listening, and as always, until next time, keep it twisted.